Good afternoon, everybody. Pleasure to be here in Singapore. So hopefully over the next sort of 40 minutes or so, you will get some great insights from these three distinguished gentlemen. I'm just here to sort of moderate and keep them all in check and make sure that we get through the subject. So again, thank you all for sort of being part of it. And as Kelly said, you know, we're going to look at sort of how resilient is, you know, your organization when that unexpected does hit, you know, how health and safety leaders can shape cultures that prevent disruption, they support the recovery, protect people and performance, and it will hopefully uncover some practical sort of strategies for building resilience and embedding business continuity principles into safety frameworks and ensuring organizations can adapt under pressure. So as Kelly's already introduced our panelists, we'll sort of start off with one of the first sort of topics, and then I shall pass over to each of my colleagues here to get their thoughts on the processes as well. So the first one we're going to discuss is about sort of linking safety culture and business resilience, and it's about to explore how a strong safety culture underpins organizational resilience. So my first question, and I'll start over at with Addy. How do you see that sort of connection between safety culture and an organization's ability to recover from disruption?
Okay, thank you, Ian, for the introduction and a great question. So in my view, safety culture forms the foundation for the resilience in any organization. And what do we mean by safety culture? First of all, we talk quite often about culture. So to me, the culture is the decisions that we make every day. How do we involve safety in those decisions, whether it's a decision related to a commercial, a strategic planning. So if in an organization, safety is considered in all those aspects, that's where we say it's a culture, and which incorporates safety, and eventually it leads to resilience, where people are empowered not only to speak but to take actions, and those actions are not punitive. They are recognized and they are appreciated. So that's plays a vital role.
Yep. No, thank you. I don't know if Dr. Go or Jamie, you want to add anything to that at all?
Okay, I before I start, I need to warn everybody. I'm actually coming from a business continuity background. And it's an extreme background. It's the extreme of the safety rim. So my examples is more international. So let's start off with culture. As what Eddie had said. In business continuity, the most important thing in safety is to do a regular risk assessment. Organization must do risk assessment regularly, because you've done it once, that's it. You don't care anymore. And given is given, but it changes every now and then. My best example will be actually like I operate globally. One of the things is that you need to know who is your neighbor in business continuity. A very good example, good old days, is I used to work in a bank. We thought being with Philippine oil company, very prestigious, right? The problem I had at that point in time was every time they raised the oil price, I get 2 hand grenades thrown on my front desk. Okay, and the bank has to be on the ground floor, right? Because and then the oil company is there. So what I'm trying to say is that the culture is all about risk assessment. It's all about thinking through what could affect you, who is your neighbor, and all these things. So culture is, to me, in the business continuity world, is to be very conscious and to work with all the safety and health safety people and security people. All right, thanks.
Yeah, the organization I work for is involved in major disasters around the world. So we investigate major incidents, and we often come in at the end. But talking of the cultural side, we deal with about 50 different countries. I don't actually consider safety culture as a thing. It's a subset of culture itself. And every organization, every country you work in is going to be different. Every floor in a building has a different culture in your organization. So it's about working out what that is ahead of time, because when it comes to big disasters, you've got to have trust in everyone, and trust goes through that. And that's your colleagues, your co-workers, and your leadership team. And quite often we turn up to big events and the leadership team's nowhere to be found. People are very nervous. They're worried about blame, and they're worried about sort of punitive action happening, whether it be HSC or the coroners or the police involved. So getting that trust up front and discussing, as you say, risk assessments and looking what could possibly go wrong. And you're not going to predict everything, but have a good look at them and tie this into your risk assessment. So look, what could possibly go wrong? What's the likelihood of it happening? It's just comment, and then what are the consequences if it does happen, and how are we going to manage that as a team? And you've got to have those discussions right up front at the start, and it should be part of your risk assessment process really from day one, thinking about the continuity and how you're going to keep operating. Because if the business can't keep operating, nobody would be here. We wouldn't be in work.
That's a great set of answers. And I think the thing from an IOSH point of view is you look at culture, and it's an intangible asset. It's, if you ask multiple people, they've all got a different idea of what that culture looks like, and it's trying to get that balance to have it, you know, across an organization. And one of the questions is sort of how do safety professionals help sort of embed that resilience across sort of, you know, that thinking across the business? You know, how can they do that? Adi, I don't know if...
Yeah, so I've been seeing this for past 18 years, and there has been a transition that what I have experienced. So when I started in the industry, I saw that HSC used to be a gatekeeper. Any issue related to safety, you call the safety person, you call the safety officer. And over a period of time, it has transitioned from gatekeeper to enablers. Now safety is not only about stopping the job, it's about enabling a business which is safety resilient. So that's where I see, you know, the role has completely changed.
Yep, no, I agree. Dr. Go?
I think in terms of talking about this, one of the important things is to understand that in Asia, we look alike, but we are not the same. So it's very important that we understand the culture of each country when we want to implement anything. The challenge we find is like what Adia says, whenever there's a health issue or safety, health and safety issue, we will call the HSC people or OSHA people. The most important thing, I think the takeaway is to understand the culture and not the culture, sorry, understand the attitude. Like example, if you go to Japan, you go to Korea, the culture is they are risk adverse. They are risk adverse. What do I mean by that? It means they'll spend a lot of time preparing and preventing, mitigating as much as can. So this is a very important thing to understand the country's culture. Like in Singapore, this morning Commissioner was saying 2028 the legislation is coming out. There's tough legislation for Singapore company to comply, but it's a culture. Then we have the other type, which I call risk tolerance. Another bunch of countries in Asia. I used to be a global head in London. One of the challenge we find is that a lot of culture are risk tolerance. What do you mean by that? It means that I can, it's a disaster, but I can wait it out. I can tolerate. And again, no discrimination intended. Like example, you are in Manila, you in Philippines, you get hit by a typhoon. After one and another, after a while, you just get it. I can wait. But in Japan, if you are having a Richter scale being projected to you or tsunami coming to you, I was in Fukushima 1 month after the nuclear reactor explosion. They tell you the number, you run to the back, and there are lines for you to stop there because based on Richter scale, the wave will only hit that point. Interesting, right? So these are things that you must understand. There's a risk adverse country, and there's risk tolerance. So when you operate, please understand that aspect of the culture of our country. Okay.
Well, we find that communication's key, number one key, but what's often forgotten about is staff. And HSE representatives are usually the go-between between perhaps the board and the staff when it comes to issues. And when there's a major event, everybody panics. Everybody's worried about jobs. They're worried about investigations that might be ongoing. And actually, it's often forgotten about the staff and just communicating what's happening. So we encourage, when we run investigations and we train companies to do investigations, we encourage that open and transparency. Show them what's going on within limits, because there is obviously legal reasons you can't show everything, but let people know what's going on. And a lot of the organizations we work with will train them in the processes that we use for investigations across the whole organization, just so people know actually what's going on when it goes wrong. And the health and safety personnel are usually that go-between, and being able to explain that to people and explain what's happening is critical. So communication is a number one skill that's often forgotten about. And in the world of digital and AI, it's becoming more and more important that you can communicate and speak to people.
And I think ever since the pandemic, obviously the role of the OSH professional at the sort of top table at a board level has been more prevalent than ever, because, you know, as soon as the pandemic hit, the boards were looking at their global heads of HSE going, what do we do? What on earth are we going to do? And it elevated the role of the HSE professional within industry. And I think from that, there is now that opportunity to move that forward still, because you've got the ear of the board. And one of my questions was about sort of, what do you see as the role that the HSE professional should play with that sort of business continuity, planning and sort of response, and feeding that back into the business and saying, this is the strategy? How do you see that sort of?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, like HSE professionals need to be integral of the process. It cannot be done in isolation. So let's just put it into practice. When we say HSE professional conducting an inspection at a site, let's take an example of a Lotto audit. So we have got a lockout, tagout. Normally the inspector will go, inspect everything is in place or not, and then come back with a report. So when we integrate business continuity into that, so we create a scenario where suppose there is a failure, supply chain failure, where the primary supplier of the valve is unavailable. So do we contact the secondary supplier and see that whether that product is available and that can be made available at site on time? So that's where you integrate practically HSE with business continuity. And of course, I mean, going back to your question, it goes back to planning, that in the planning phase itself, all these aspects need to be included.
Mm-hmm.
That's my take.
I have been doing business continuity for more than 3 decades. One of the things I must confess to you, safety is given, and that's wrong. All right, to us, we embed safety, we assume safety is embedded into business continuity. I'm going to tell you that's how ignorant I am. However, one of the things is that safety, if you build it properly, with the health and safety people, you will understand that once you get safety out of your face, you can run the disaster very well. All right, but that is not by chance. It has to be a hand-to-hand with the safety people. A good example, I'm going to tell you, there's 3 major in Asia. We had hit by Y2K, then we hit by SARS. SARS only happened in Hong Kong, Singapore, and Toronto in Canada. We learned a lot from SARS, but not enough to handle COVID. We thought it was going to be a short one, and it's gone. So we never learned to work with get the health and safety people in play. Even after SARS, when COVID hit us in Singapore, we got hit hard, very hard, but not as hard as some of the countries that did not get SARS, right? So there is always a continuous learning process. My comment is this. We never work with the health and safety people from a business continuity point of view until we hit COVID. A good example, my phone did not stop ringing for 3 days. Someone say, what do I do? All the people I train in the world call me and say, what do you do? So my comment was very simple. Where are your layers? Because we only know how to recover, continue the operation. That's what business continuity people do. But have you ever considered how do you stop the virus from coming into a company? What happens if the virus in the company is from a staff? So that's a health and safety requirement, but we don't care. Then the next thing is, how do you stop the people? We didn't talk to security people. We didn't talk to the security. It's always about continuing operation. So from a business continuity point of view, we are fairly ignorant. But the good news is that most professionals like us, we embed it. We embed the safety into us, but it's not sufficient. You not only embed to you, you must embed into your senior management. Like this morning, can you go to the board? Not yet. But if you are able to embed this into your senior management and say when something goes wrong, the first thing is life safety, not negotiable. So it's nothing to do with the current one. Like I give you an example. I had a racial riot in one of the country, and I wanted to pull out the team from. So it was no offense to our Muslim friend. It was actually the Muslim killing the Chinese, and my team was Chinese on the ground. So I pulled them out, and my management stops me. What was the comment? You set a precedent, Mo Heng. Why? Because in future, anything goes wrong, we have to pull out the whole team from the country. I say that's beside the point. Pull the team out because they'll be slaughtered, and they don't believe me. And I got a letter of warning for that. By the way, what I did was I go to a Minister of Foreign Affairs. I say, when's your next plane coming out from Singapore Airlines from that country? Number two, I actually got the name of the people without they are not leaving with a passport. I'm going to get them to leave without passport. And I told the team, leave now. And I put my credit card on the table at the travel desk. I bought all their tickets. And I pulled them out. And because of that, non-compliance to instruction of not pulling the team out. So what I'm trying to say is the moral behind the story is that the management fail to have this safety mentality. Okay, so they think of operation because there's business continuity. We have continued operation, but take care of the people and get that into the senior management mind, and the rest is going to be history. All right, so sorry for that kind of story. Okay.
It really just re-emphasizes the point is scenario planning. If you don't know who your team are, you don't know who your media relations are, you don't know who your security teams are, and in big organizations that's not uncommon. And the more you can plan and do scenario planning, so you do your risk assessments, but how often do you sit down and say, right, let's imagine this has happened, let's work on it, and you work through it, and you get to know the people that you're going to be dealing with, because quite often we arrive on site to a big disaster and people are just meeting each other for the first time, and if you've not met your media relations and you've not met your security team, it's very hard to work together, and much better to practice that in a closed environment where it's safe and there's no media and there's no police and there's no coroners knocking on your door or bereaved families and things like that. So actually just practicing scenarios that you've got in your risk assessments, pull them out and say, right, today we're going to have a look at this. Let's have a look at it. Bring in the teams that we would be working with in a real life scenario.
And from a practical sort of experience side, what are the sort of most effective tools that you would use to sort of align safety and continuity? Are there sort of tools or systems that you have found work best?
So yeah, it's right from planning, like when we talk about planning, integrating all the departments together, and then once the plan is in place, the next thing is how people are trained about it, right? How people understand what's the plan and how are they going to execute it when the need arises. So training is important, and it goes right from the leadership level to the people who are at the ground executing the task. Training is one-time thing. Then the next thing comes the simulation exercises, the drills. So the regular drills and the feedback going back into the process, that what are the learnings from those drills and how do we continuously improve the process. So that plays the key role, I think, in the whole process.
Dia says it's important. I remember you constantly have to practice, and the most important thing is during a disaster, do not read the manual. That's what a lot of people are doing, and it's too late. So I'm not religious, but God help you. Okay. So my most important take is I have a very interesting concept called accountability and ownership. I give you a very good example. One of my biggest problem I have 52 countries, by the way. one of my biggest problems is that the senior management do not want to make a decision. Or rather, let me rephrase. I will wait. I need more information. If you're in Singapore, it's worse. My boss say, are we 90% right? Sounds familiar for some of you? You will never be 90% right. You'll be right in 3 months' time. By then, you'll be dead. Right? So it's very important that we sort out the accountability and the ownership. And I give a very blatant example. I went back to the group CEO and asked him a very simple question. I said, sir, I have problem with all your CEOs, but all of them are higher ranked than me. They are all my bosses. So there's no way of me telling them what to do. So we go into mandate. So after 1.5 years of fighting, we have a policy. My policy is very simple. When something happens, 15 minutes time, I'm going to call you. Are you activating the plan? Is that a safety issue? He'll say, not enough information, Moheng. I have to wait half an hour now. 15 minutes later, I'm going to call you again. Are we activating the plan? The answer is no. We are still thinking, 45 minutes later, 15 minutes, the third call I'm going to make to you. Are we activating a plan? And if the CEO dare to tell me no, I'm going to tell you very simple. The group CEO and the group shall not be supporting you. Interesting? Very, very tough, and it's mandated anyway. So we will not be supporting you in your own, again, not religious, God help you. Okay, so that's what I'm going to say. And guess what? They will activate the plan. Now, when they activate a plan, it's very important because the earlier you activate the plan, you have to consider the safety of the people. So if you activate too late, there will be casualties. In my world, there will be casualty after 1 hour. Okay, so this is something we have to do unless you have a building collapse like what I had in India. Nothing you can do. He's very alive. Nothing I can do. But the most important thing is make a decision. Make a decision. And the problem is that senior management wants to be safe. So you have to force them. Now, the final comment I have, very simple. If Dr. Goh makes a decision, I'm a small person in the organization. When I make a right decision, simple. My boss will say, you are paid well to do it. So it's right that you make the decision. If I make the wrong decision, excuse my French, who is the idiot who made that decision? And I have to say me. Right? So that's the important thing. However, think on the other side. If a senior management make a decision and it's a wrong decision, you know what the board will say? I love this CEO. He has the guts to make the decision even though it's wrong. Sounds familiar? So always let your CEO make the decision and he has to pick. If he makes the right decision, you know what we'll do? We will say he's almighty, right? So what I'm trying to say, the moral behind my simple story is this. Safety, continuity, security has to be decided at the highest level in the shortest possible time. Set it as a mandate, fight your policy like hell, and get it done. I have done it, and I tell you frankly, if I show you my shirt, all my bag is full of skull. Okay, thank you.
Tools-wise, we tend to focus on the investigation afterwards, but part of that is the organizational learning. And I think the biggest problem we see is that there are policies and documents full of jargon, full of technical language that are overcomplicated. People don't understand them. And you're dealing with people usually in high-stress situations and people that want results quickly. So you need to have a simple, straightforward, jargon-free approach and a standardized approach that you can use across organizations. So that's what we tend to do, is go in and train companies how to deal with incidents like that by using language that you can use in 55 different countries that you can transfer across, and you can take those organizational learnings and essentially debrief after an event. You've probably heard of learning teams moving around. Similar thing, sitting around a table, debriefing and learning from these events that you've dealt with, and then scaling it up and going, what if? What if that was bigger? What if this happened? And looking at the potential consequences of smaller events will help you learn for those major disasters.
Okay. Adi?
To add a quick note, we spoke about the business continuity plan itself. So I have seen documents which are very thick documents. Once it is developed, approved, and it just lies on a shelf. Nobody goes through documents. So you brought up a very important point, that document has to be something that we can live with it every day. It has to be a live document because things changes, the scenarios changes, the dynamics changes, and then if we have a document lying for 2 years, when the reality comes, then the names mentioned in the documents, probably those people are not even there in the organization, and it becomes useless.
I think you're quite right. It's exactly that. Is that the amount of jargon floating around, the amount of technical language that people just don't get. We recently dealt with a multiple fatality in a railway incident in India, and we were going through the investigation, and the SMS, the safety management system, was 280 pages long. Now, they expected people to have read that and briefed that, but on top of that, the people reading it communicated in Hindi. They didn't speak English, and the document was all written in English, but written in technical language. So they had no clue what this document said, but it was just a given. And when they were asked, do you understand that? Everybody nodded and said, yes, you're doing a job. And critical information isn't going across. So when it comes to the initial documents and after the event, you've got to make sure your stuff makes sense. And there's just too much jargon and too much rubbish in the world. And the whole business world is full of it. And the safety world is brilliant at it, using technical language. So the one thing to take away is call everybody out. If you don't understand them, ask them what it is. And 99% of the time, they won't have a clue themselves. It's quite confronting for people. So just question everybody. What does that mean? And you'll be quite surprised how many people haven't a clue.
Just to add on, post-COVID, the Institute has changed its teaching philosophy. Just for info, we are always writing a manual. We call it Business Continuity Planning Manual. Manual is mandatory. Why? Because your boss wants it. Forget about it. You will create a manual. All right? So it's the bureaucracy of the organization. If you don't have manual, especially in the government sector, you're wrong. It's called SOP and so on and so forth. So keep that manual. The philosophy that we have changed in BCM Institute over the last 3 years is this. After you have a manual, we have a playbook. What's a playbook? A playbook is at most a 2-page A4. And the playbook will be, these are the 30 things, 50 steps that you need to think of before, during, and after. Okay? If you have done a crisis or disaster before, there's something that you will understand. Reading a book, like what Adia and Jamie have said, is useless. Okay? The most important thing is this. The other thing to take note is psychologically, your brain is actually not functioning well under stress. Okay, I'm going to tell you, I've seen the psychiatrist. If you have friends that die of a natural death, and after a while, your brain freeze whenever that you have a disaster. So that's the reason why I left the corporate. I freeze for 5 minutes to 10 minutes. All right. But most importantly is to make the key message I'm going to send is have a playbook. And when your brain is frozen, you have 20 steps. These 20 steps will tell you. And when you're panicking, you will never think of the 20 steps. When you drink coffee, you write them down, and then you take the list and then say what is relevant, which sequence is correct, how should I reprioritize the sequencing, and which steps are not needed. It's very, very important to get that right. And then you can execute, even under duress. Not everybody, I've done so many disasters, I still find it very difficult. So I can imagine if you have not done first time, you'll be frozen. And then you got this bureaucracy called your boss, who always give you hell. I need more information. Are you sure it's the right decision and all these things? There's no room for this. Make a decision if you are in my industry. Make a decision and it's never right. It's always 60% right. And then you do corrective action along the way. However, you save a lot of life, you save a lot of operation from being heavily disrupted, and you save yourself fighting the press for the next 6 months on the media. The media will kill you if you respond too slow, right? So this is something, it's a good takeaway, but this is a health and safety session, but I'm talking more business continuity. Over to you.
One of the ones sort of looking forward, because there was a question I was going to ask, but you all sort of answered it already. But looking forward, sort of forward thinking, is how do you think sort of health and safety leaders and leadership in general should sort of be preparing for the next 5 years with technology changing, etc.? What do you think they should be thinking about now for the next 5 years? Because again, you don't want a manual that you write now that 5 years later you take it off the shelf, you blow the dust off it, and you go, this isn't relevant at all. So what would you sort of, as best practice, be talking to people about and saying, this is what you should be thinking about?
Yeah, so as you rightly said, the technology is changing at a very rapid scale, and which is beyond imagination. So talking about next 5 years, as we spoke about the documentation, like who's going to read it? But when people are going to read it, if it's really interesting to them, how do we make it interesting? Leverage the technology, make it more immersive. So these days, like if you look at the VR, so the virtual reality, you wear your glasses and you feel like you are in a cinema hall, and you go for your training. So that makes it much more engaging, immersive experience. And that's where people will believe that, yeah, let's do it. So utilizing those tools over a period of times could change the whole landscape and move from documented procedures to a more immersive experience.
Lovely.
I think not personal. Health and safety, like mentioned the previous speaker, to have a chief safety officer, it depends on the industry. A certain industry will have a chief safety officer, but a lot of other industry will never have one. My takeaway is this: the world is now changing. We have people, like example, that within the next 5 years, there must be a chief sustainability officer. It's a trend. So I think the way forward is, even in my industry, we are going to remove the word business continuity. It's called operational resilience, or even in the UK, it's called organization resilience. It's coming. So what my conclusion to the next 5 years is, you must not work in silo. In operational resilience, which in fact, as an Asian, I'm training Europeans and Americans on OR. Interesting, and my only comment is this: we are working in silo. We have to integrate now. So safety is one aspect of it. Operational risk is one aspect of it. Crisis management is one aspect of it. And even now, the latest third-party risk is one of them. So what I'm trying to say is that health and safety is one of the major risks and a subcomponent of this mega thing. So what I'm trying to say is that maybe there will not be a chief safety officer in a bank. Never. I'm going to tell you that. However, the safety element must be embedded into, say, organization resilience as a key component of the entire thing. So I see that in the next 5 years. However, the industry is still focusing on people falling from building. It has to move forward. Like what I see the opportunity in COVID. COVID is a fantastic opportunity for the health and safety people to move forward. And it's over. It's over. And there wasn't any, in my opinion, there wasn't any major step forward. COVID is the best time to say, I'm the boss. And there will be another pandemic, trust me. And the health and safety people, in my opinion, should be the team lead for this exercise. And that's the opportunity that we have to catch on now and move on. And you will be an important element in the management team. But being a chief safety officer, I'm going to tell you, only in the in certain industry. All right, thanks.
Yeah, looping back to how technology impacts, I think if anything, actually, it's going to emphasize core human skills of communicating, what we were talking about at the beginning, having empathy. You can't have a machine having empathy when it comes to a major disaster and standard problem solving. So humans are always going to be needed for that. And you just need to look, not long ago here, Singapore Airlines had their incident in May 24. They sadly had a fatality with turbulence. And the communication was textbook. If you want to look at a business continuity example in dealing with an incident, it's a brilliant one to read about. Right from the CEO right through, the communication was perfect. He backed his pilots who diverted and landed, but the communication through all social media streams was constant. They had one point with the media, and this was all down to humans dealing with it and dealing with it in an empathetic way. They were able to deal with the people, they got hold of the families immediately, and they dealt with it brilliantly. And now it's a learning case. So I think the human skills are going to come to the forefront even more, and we're going to see that needed in the skill set of safety teams. They're going to need to be able to problem solve, they're going to need to be able to critically think, and they're going to be able to communicate across multiple cultures in a jargon-free, simple approach. And I can see technology helping, but I think those skills will become even more needed.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It's the balance between the human and that, you know, technology, whether it's robotics, etc., and it's got to be the right balance to it, but it should only help sort of drive the safety culture forward. And my sort of last question before we'll open it up to see if anyone wants to ask any questions, but it's, what advice would you give to organizations that are just beginning that sort of to align safety culture with continuity planning? What would you sort of, from your own experience of it, what would you say are some key points to think about as they're going on that journey?
Interesting question, and I think we spoke about it. So it's again for a new organization involving safety right from the day one into all planning, business continuity. That's the key. So a lot of times what happens, the initial stage of an organization focus is given on the productivity of scaling the operations and the financials, and safety takes the back seat. And then over a period of time, 5 years, 7 years down the line, and then you realize that what we skipped at that point of time, now it is costing us. So those risk assessments need to be done right at the day one.
My view is that as a professional, we have to continue to integrate. When I say integrate, means whether you like it or not, the world is moving. The organization are moving towards resilience. Whether you're new or you're old. Okay. The only thing is, if you are new, if you're given the proper head start, then you build all the elements there. Like just now, remember I mentioned to you, you do your risk assessment, operational risk, then you do your health and safety, but you do it in together. And the most important part, I always overly emphasize, is management. Management will say, I support you. That's called lip service. Never done. Okay. So if you want that to be done properly, they must act. How do they act? They must act by giving you the budget, giving you a mandate, and giving you a regular session. For example, if you've got town hall day, that's one of the topics. That must be one of the topics. And once you overly emphasize it slightly, safety and health and safety becomes a very top priority. So it's very important that we do it. But I'm heading towards the direction of resiliency. Operational resiliency, organizational resiliency is two different terminology. I need to warn you. But the most important thing is, we are trying to build a resilient organization. We must integrate. Now the problem is that we're working in silos. We are all working in silos, and that's the reason why when something happens, things break down. Because we have different bosses, we have different style, different culture. Like example, what they say, have you actually practiced a full run, integrated together? Try that. Then you know how many funny character you have in your boardroom. Then the other thing is, there will be 1 or 2 senior guys, but they're senior. They are dedicated their life to make your life miserable. Trust me. So there are a lot of such people. So get that done now, and tell the boss will come in and say, you shut up, you talk, even though they are senior. So this is the kind of culture that we have to continue to build if you are new. So you need to start off correctly. Of course, the proper way is to write your procedure, write your SOP. That one is standard. That one you can get a consultant in. You will do it for you. But the most important thing is start at the top, get them in, get the mindset there, and move. And I think the rest is going to be history, even if you are young.
I'll be quick, as we're running out of time, but just practice. Get your risk registers, get your risk assessments. You do them all the time. You're looking at what could possibly go wrong. That's essentially the big question you're asking. Take one a week, one a fortnight. And I know you're limited on time, but practice it. Now, that could be sitting around a table having a cup of coffee discussing scenarios, or it could be pressure testing your teams, and pressure test them and make it as realistic as you possibly can. Much better doing that than when you've got media knocking in the door, you've got the coroners, you've got the police, you've got the board hassling you. Much better do that. Get the communication in place, get to know who you're working with, and practice everything as much as you possibly can. And hopefully you don't need to use it, but much better to do some live scenario testing.
No, thank you. And just sort of a a closing remark, which before we open it up to questions. I mean, the conversation's made it clear today that resilience isn't built in that moment of crisis. It's cultivated long before. The strong safety culture is more than just compliance. It's a strategic asset that protects your people, your actual property, preserves the performance of the business, etc. And as we've heard from the panel, integrating health and safety into business continuity isn't just possible, it's essential. And whether you're leading a multinational or a local team, the path to resilience, it starts with the leadership. It's collaboration, it's a shared commitment to safety. So let's try and take these insights forward and continue building cultures that don't just survive disruption, they grow stronger because of it. I'd like to thank my panelists for their insight, and happy to throw it over. We've got about 4 minutes or so. If there is anyone out there that wants to ask a question, just raise your hand and I'll run down with the microphone and see. Or if we just stunned you all into silence. Any questions from anybody at all?
5 more seconds to go.
We have 3 minutes. If we don't get a question, we might do a song. So no,
Really bad singer as well. So
I'm worse. So well, thank you very much for attending. Enjoy the rest of the event, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.